Hey, welcome back everyone. So in today's video, I want to talk about or answer a request about some of the brushes that I use to do pieces like this. So with this one, the question was like what inking brushes. I had shared the time lapse in the previous video, and they're like, it looks like you're using a couple different brushes. So I'll just explain, you can see the layers over here. Also, just to give you an understanding of where I'm at, I'm utilizing a Sense Labs tablet, regular tablet. This was actually one of my first tests to do, see if I could ink the way that I was used to. I like inking on the iPad Pro, and sometimes traditionally, but I wanted to see if I could do it on this tablet. So at any rate, I'll show you the layers here because that's the way I start. Is I start with a sketch. So for this particular brush, I go into the pencil brush, use the darker pencil. I'll kind of demonstrate that a little bit. So I'll create a layer over here and show you because it doesn't look, this is kind of how it looks after I've reworked it and soft erased it a little bit. And you see I also like to drop in like these big kind of clumps of shadow. So I feel like it helps me to visualize the three-dimensional aspect of the character, which makes everything else easier. But you see, as far as the rendering, I started very, almost non-existent, so I get in these basic shapes. I use the brush relatively light. If I press down really hard, I can get it to dark. So I guess that's going to be dependent upon your pressure curve. I think that's what most people struggle with. So you see with the darker pencil, let me show you my settings here. So you can copy those down, but you have to also look at your pressure curve for your device. And so I could show you that, but really that just boils down to, here's why I don't always feel the need to show that. So if I press very lightly, and I'm talking almost the weight of my hand, barely, right? I'm not even putting any pressure down. That's what I'm getting. Medium pressure, firm pressure, just, Hulk hand, right? So the reason I'm showing you this way is because you have to really figure that out for yourself. Some of these devices, if you get the pressure curve wrong, at your very lightest, you're going to get something like that. Well, if that's not what you're after with a pencil brush, then it defeats the purpose and you have to adjust your pressure curve accordingly. So hopefully that makes sense. I like to be able to press very lightly and get like this light gray, I guess resembling of maybe a 2H lead or something, I don't know, but just something very light. And I like to also be able to scale up the brush with my bracket keys and blob in some value like this. I feel like it really helps save time. And again, you can see that a lot of this is very scratchy. So what I do is I'll draw some in. I'll go to a big soft erase. So it's this brush here, this setting's here. I'll pull it back a bit. I'm on the wrong layer. I'll pull it back a bit and I'll refine it. Now, if I wanted to, I could sit here and refine over and over again with even just this brush. There's definitely pieces I've done that where I've sat here and it's like I'm drawing, right? I just keep soft erasing. So for traditional artists, the comparison is a Prismacolor kneaded eraser or comparable kneaded eraser, and then reworking the lines until you get this tighter line work, and then maybe some cross hatching, some tapered lines, thick to thin. You see I'm pulling each stroke multiple times and then going and throwing it, So there's all different ways to do that. But I get, look how messy. This is just a mess, right? So you see I didn't do all that here. I went with something more loose and I thought I could clean this up as I ink it. So again, you can do this over and over again with the soft erase and redraws and keep tightening it up. Or you can get to a level of comfort and you can start to, I took this layer, dropped the opacity down, right there. And then I started to ink over top. And then I keep toggling off the previous layer to make sure it's all pulling together. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't able to do this right at first, and this isn't, I don't know, the more I look at it, it's not like it's super impressive, but I guess it was great for me in the sense that I did it with a tablet that I'm not entirely confident with yet. I'm feeling a lot better about it, but still I've got some connections to make there. And then also I was able to bridge the gap from a quick sketch to an ink. So let me show you how I do that, because you can watch the time lapse in the previous video and that'll give you some of the story, but maybe you just need to see it, how I use it. So Again, the original question was, what brushes? Well, 9 times out of 10, the majority of what I use is just the G pen with these settings here, okay? I guess I do have some stabilization up. But what I do is I start very thin. I would say usually. Sometimes I'll go in for like just shapes of shadows. I think that's a good approach. Like, saying, okay, what's the shadow here going to be like? Blocking it in. I'll do some fills. Other times I go with just this very thin set of lines and I just try to figure out a style. And actually, you know what? Let me blue line this. I don't know if I did that in the other one, but usually I do. Where is that sucker? Right there. There. Yeah, I like inking over blue line. It just feels better. Okay, so yeah, I might start and get an area going where I can figure out the kind of the inking style I'm going to use. So I do a lot of thick to thin. Grab a shape and say, okay, let's bring this down over here. Let's sculpt this up a little bit more. You see the information's there. I just need to refine it a bit. Okay. Then I'll say, okay, like where's the wrinkles on this guy? Generally the more wrinkles, the creepier they look. The more hard angles, the more villainous they look. So I kind of contemplate all that as I'm doing this. And then part of it is I have to be careful on how much I try to really clean something up. I'm probably pulled in a bit too tightly for something like this, but for me it works out better because I'm using I think this is a 32-inch screen, and I'm actually pretty far back from it, which I think is a good idea. Remember our parents always saying, get away from the TV, it's going to make you blind. I think they were onto something there. Okay, as all of us that did that are probably wearing glasses right now. Yeah, right. Here we're just talking schmack. Okay, so again, just grabbing these pieces, sculpting them out. And what I'm going to do is ink a little bit of this and also go back from transparent, translucent, whatever that word is. And I'll just grab, I'll sculpt it that way as well. Now keep in mind too, I'm probably a little bit, or I know I'm a little bit not warmed up, where when I draw the sketch first, it's kind of also a warming up process. And inks, I feel like, for me anyways, we're all a bit different, but for me, inks, you have to be warmed up significantly more. Like it's just think about it, you're like deciding the final line work. It's a lot more decisive of a process. So although maybe it shouldn't be, like maybe maybe it's a sign I need to loosen up, which is very well possible. I'm just kind of a tense person. Like the penguin. We both have big noses. Mine doesn't have quite the point though. Mine's a little bit more like, majestic big nose, like a royalty. Kidding. Anyways. All right. You got to do these things to make yourself feel good about your big nose. It's a sign of nobility. Or noseability. Okay, so you see I'm doing a lot of this with just the G pen. So let me get away from this for a second because and I just so you know, I generally will do all this little bitty rendering at the end. I guess not always. There's times I just get distracted and I work on whatever area I'm at. But the main thing is that I take these shapes of shadows now and I render them in different ways that soften them up or stylize them or round them out, put a bit of value to it, gradation, however you want to look at it. There's probably a few different ways to look at it, but I just like playing around with different types of rendering. I don't know, the more the merrier. And as I've mentioned in lots of videos, I got that initially from watching, being a huge fan of Todd McFarlane's work. And then I've also integrated a lot from what I've learned from David Finch. Um, all of them really. You know, I'm a big fan of Scott Williams inks, Danny Mickey. I mean, just all the cool people that do this stuff professionally. I just pay attention to all their stuff, and I grab little bits and pieces, and I'm like a weird caricature of those different things, I guess. So yeah. So yeah, I'll play around with that. Like even that feels too flat. I want him to have this tight upper lip, I think, right there, but that almost still feels flat for some reason, even though I feel like I added too much rendering. So I'll go back and forth and I'll just play around with these. Sometimes I'll break the lines off in different ways. And I do a lot of testing, playing around with different tapers, different ways they break apart, all sorts of things, right? And then I can go back and go, okay, did I go anywhere close? Yeah, see, I was in a totally different vibe. That's funny. I kind of did the same thing with the lip, though, didn't I? It's similar. But yeah, but part of it is warming up. And the other thing is this, is I like to add the bigger shapes, break off into some of this rendering, right? And then I like to go even finer with like just little tiny details, kind of scratchy little bits of rendering. Again, that's something that I feel like I picked up from looking at Todd McFarlane's close-ups. I just used to love and was so inspired, like when you would see the close-up of any character in his shots, and some of those tiny little fine lines just really gave it depth and dimension to me, like a nice range. So you see this doesn't have that yet, but I'm not going to get into inking this whole thing. I really want to explain what the question was about, but I felt like I needed to show you that a lot of it's done with this G Pen as far as this goes. And then I also scale the brush up and down dramatically. So when I got into doing this part, I think I was using the same brush, and I was doing a lot of scribbles like this. And it looks really bad at first, and I think you can see that in the time lapse that I shared, that it looks very clunky and messy, and there's probably a better way. I'm just kind of spazzing out here, I guess. But I just know that I can go back with this infinite whiteout, and I can build in texture, and it's like, you ever see when somebody does a really good, cool charcoal pencil drawing and they keep adding and adding and all of a sudden it looks super realistic? I guess I think that way about stuff like this. You can just keep overlapping these textures and you start to get better at finding these little shapes in there. This still is a bit messy, but if you pull back, voila, it kind of looks like fur to me. I guess good enough. So I do a lot of that back and forth. Again, that's the same brush. But then I think what people were pointing out, let's get these out of here and look at it again. So predominantly all this is with that, except for probably the background elements is what they were seeing. And I know I used a couple brushes for here, so let me show you that real quick. So go back. I guess I could just work off this one for now. It looks a little bit better. And I'll add a layer over top. And so for that, I just go down in here to me custom brushes. Shameless plug time. Sorry, I got to do it, folks, how I pay for my kids' food. If you want to check these out, there'll be a link in the description box below. I make these custom brushes for a lot of different things, Procreate, Clip Studio. And if you enjoy brushes like I enjoy brushes, check them out. All right, so what I've got here is different stipple patterns. And I want to get into making some more dry brush effects too. This stuff always comes in handy because, background elements and kind of these gritty scenes, these are perfect. And what you can do is after you pick the brush, you can even bump up the particle size. Actually, I'm going to need to update that one. Where's my particle size? Well, just so you know, you can go into here, see that little wrench? I'm not a mechanic, but that's a wrench. You go into here to, is it brush tip? No. Where is it? Stroke? It'll say particle size. Spring effect? Particle size. No? Where did that sucker go? Brush size? Wow, I haven't been in here in a bit. And then, it's just tough because there's so many different settings. Spray effect, particle density, particle size right here. So anyways, just if this, you've already got this brush set, for instance, you want to add that in there, put the little eye right there and see how it popped up over there. I should have had it in there. One of the reasons is that a lot of these brushes, especially, you know, these kind of background effects like this, you really want this ability to bump up your particle size, and you can make one brush look, oh, you know what, I know I didn't do it. It's because the pattern itself doesn't look good as larger. So yeah, I don't like that one. But these are meant to be used in unison as well. So let's find another one. Background stipple shade. No, this can be cool too, but you kind of blotch this down. Yeah, and it's basically cross-hatching. It's set to like horizontal, vertical. It's kind of tough to use, but you know, you get the hang of it after a while. And remember that a lot of these do a bit better with some hand-drawn effects in and around them, you know, through them, whatever. Tribal border, no. Let's see. What was the other one that I used here? Got Kirby Crackle, but it wasn't that. Background hatch here? No, that's a different kind of, yeah, this is an old school popular one as well. But see how that actually blends together kind of nicely. And then you would erase back. Obviously, you got to use the layers. I actually kind of like that, to tell you the truth. But that's where you experiment and play around with those. Where is it? Smooth anchor. Yeah, abstract? No. No, not that one. Stipple texture. That's the same one I had. Okay, I had to go down further. Got too many of these darn things. That's the one I just used. Stipple. There we go. So there's another good stipple shading. And these ones you can really use together pretty well. So I'll probably just kind of blotch it in there. Sometimes I'll even convert one of these to a gray. Or you know what? Let me do this. Go back. Add a layer. I'm going to blotch this in kind of heavily. Sporadically. Like that. Leave a little bit of light in there. And then you can always use that as a gray tone as well. And it kind of builds up that sense of value. But yeah, so, and really just using layers to your benefit with these is a good idea. And then what I generally do is go back to G Pen or selection tool, set it to erase, and then just clean it up. Just like that. So yeah, so brushes like this really come in handy. It's just, they're highly effective, they're fast to use, but I think that's what you guys were seeing. And you know, let me know, comment below and let me know if there's more that I haven't been able to answer for you here. But that is really the process, and it's just a building up and cycling of the different sizes of brushes and things like that. This came out a bit messier than what I did. Let's go and take a look at the other one. Yeah, so, and even some of this, I probably used, oh, you know what? I think I used another one. So I used the stipple brush I mentioned. I believe that's the first one. Yeah, it's the first one. Very small and sporadic, right? And also, remember that you can go back with the same brushes and erase them just like I did with the other one. So let's find that stipple one. It was down to the bottom. Where are you? Stipple shade. This one or the other one? Oh. Okay, we'll just use this one. I think it was the other one. But see how I can get a variation from the intensity and the pressure. All right, I'll just go around the border, kind of a vignette effect. And sometimes I think it's more beneficial to go heavier and get a variation and a variety. So like sometimes you'll push too lightly on the brush and it just doesn't, it gives you a weird like this kind of thing. So I try to avoid that. But then also sometimes you can press really heavy on the edge and get some nice splatter effects inside there. And then also you can go back with the negative and push back the other way. And that gives you a neat little bit of texture as well. That kind of changes the look of it a bit. So again, all that, you just play around with the variables, adjust your settings, try different variations to it. But it really, yeah, there's all sorts of things you can do. And then I also coupled it with, yeah, so inside Clip Studio, you got a couple of these droplet ones that are nice as well. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's what it is. I'm pretty sure, I know that I actually incorporated some of that because see how it's spaced out more? So that gives it a nice variation as well. But again, back to the previous thing I said, all of this is really the same brush with various sizes, past the fact that I did a rough sketch. So hopefully that answered the question. I would love to know what you think as well as what you'd like to see in the future. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.